Hey there, everybody. This is Mike. Welcome to Spice Files. I'm joined again by DFB, and the two of us are also this time joined by Francois, who recently hosted the Tundra Wolves Challenge 3. And I thought I'd at least ask both of you how you're doing and what you're drinking. And two very critical questions, obviously. How's it going, both of you?
Hey, Mike. It's good to be back. Glad we're doing this tonight. This is isolation day 30, I think, for me. Working from home, just being home, which is why I'm now at the point where I'm literally wearing a kurta today, because I figured, who the hell cares? It doesn't even matter anymore. I'm drinking my official beer of the apocalypse, Fin du Monde, literally the end of the world. This is I guess appropriate to tonight. Also, this is a Canadian. This is a Quebec beer, and it's rather strong. But it comes down from, I think, where is Unit Brew? Is it in Montreal or?
It's somewhere.
Chambly.
Chambly, yeah, somewhere nearby.
Yeah. So cheers.
Nice.
Well,
Cheers. What are you drinking, Francois?
I'm on a 10 years old Aaron Malt Scotch because my beer stack I ran out at some point, and I'm trying to stretch all that I got in house for as long as I can. Keep going out to the essentials. And yeah, doing fine. Confinement too, social distancing and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely been weird. Just every day seems to stretch into the next, and it just seems like one endless day. It's really quite strange. The games of Magic over webcam to break up the monotony are quite helpful, I would say. So taking advantage of those. I'm actually, I feel like I was lucky to get a bunch of beer before this whole thing started. I'm actually drinking beer from Chalice. Because we had one of the kegs got disconnected from the CO2, so nobody could drink it for quite some time on the weekend, and we didn't find out till later. So one of the kegs was like, I don't know, probably a third full or something. So I actually just put it in bottles, and it's in my fridge, and I did that before all this started. So I've got a fridge of beer that
holding on to our chests, Mike. Is that right? Charge it back to the club.
Right, exactly. I've been sharing it with the other beasts, and I'm sure this beer will be in my fridge for quite some time. It's a stout anyway, so it actually gets better if you leave it. So at least it's not an IPA or something that would just go bad. So. Anyhow, so Francois, I thought we would just kind of ask you to tell us a little bit about your old school scene and your experiences as a TO, and just kind of your Magic background, if you will. So maybe you can lead us through that before we really dive into the tournament that we really wanted to cover.
Sure. Real quick, I've been playing Magic since 1994. Basically, started at 4th edition. Stopped around Mirage, I think, and came back eventually. Found out about old school pretty recently. It was 3 years ago, and as soon as I found out, I started talking to people around me how awesome it was compared to Modern, which I was playing at the time, and it snowballed rather quick. So we held our first local tournament in Montreal. Our first monthly, like we still do. It was in November 2018. And fast forward just a couple of months after that, in March, we were organizing the first Tundra Wolves Challenge. And where Dave came, and it was a huge inspiration because, we could read his stuff up, and there he was.
March 18, right?
Yeah, so
2 years ago. Yeah, that's fantastic.
I don't recall exactly, but it was already a good one, and the communities kept developing. We had new players joining in constantly until I'd say this year we're hitting until the COVID situation came along. Our weekly meetups were reaching the 12 consistently 12 players. So it
great.
was fun. Yeah, it was
that's a
fun.
sweet spot.
The monthlies sometimes go up to 20. Sometimes less. There's been little lulls, but we were in a very good place when Tundra Wolves Challenge number 3 came. That was on March 7th, just a month ago or so. And it's us, the Tundra Wolves. We've always been organizing things collectively, although you may know that when you are the head TO, you need to put less of hours into like the little things, but there's so many of them that you just basically it's full time for a while. But it's been a great experience. It's a great community. It's very open minded and welcoming. All the decisions we take, we do it with inclusivity in mind, and that's why I think we've connected so well with other up-and-coming communities, like in Ottawa, Toronto. We keep in touch in the other Canadian communities, and they say it's been inspiring how we're not too judgmental about like what reprint you use, even if it's a proxy. But I don't want to start a debate, but it's been expensive. And because of this, it's all about the game and the fun, and it's been good times ever since.
Nice. Yeah, that's that community size. Dave sort of said this, I think, a minute ago, but that's kind of, it feels like the sweet spot. You don't have like, you're not always having huge weekly events. You kind of know everybody, but maybe every week you're not necessarily playing exactly the same 3 people. There's some variety, but also more camaraderie because it's not huge. It seems it's similar to. It's similar to how it is out here for the Beast as well. It's about that same size.
Okay, cool. And the events, the challenge itself has been back and forth between 40 and around the 40 players mark. This year we had 44, and it is a sort of a sweet spot too. I hear, because people really get to, there's that intimate community feel. You really get to meet the people without it being overwhelming, and in a it's a cozy pub that we book, and it's really we try to make it intimate, and nice. I think people are liking it pretty much so far.
I was at the event this year again. I was happy to be at the first edition 2 years ago as well, and I mean, being able to have an event, 40 people or so in a bar. I mean, they have a great board game pub in Montreal that they didn't even have to book out the entire thing. So there were members of the public like hanging out at the bar and playing board games like in the back. But we had the entire front half of the restaurant. Really good amount of space. Kind of great vibe. The low lighting, like everything that you kind of want from a tavern kind of bar.
Sure.
And just being up there this year, it's wonderful to have the Tundra Wolves as like the neighbors to the north for New England old school. I mean, if you think about it, Francois' group is one of the closest old school clubs to me, like in like geographical terms, right? Like New York is like 4 hours to the south, and Montreal is only about 5 hours to drive to the north. So
sure,
we've got a lot of like cross traffic between the groups in the region here in the northeastern United States and eastern Canada, and I don't know, it's been really fun to just feel how like all these clubs, like the fabric of these clubs is like knitting closer together over the last, like, call it 3 years, 2-3 years.
Yeah, I agree. And we found out, it was kind of an organic process, us finding out that our geographical position is right in the center of north from you guys, but still accessible from Ottawa, accessible from Toronto, and also from Quebec City.
Quebec, yeah.
And the challenge kind of has become this meeting point for all these communities. And you can really feel this because, like, all of them, they come with a couple of cars packed with happy dudes ready to sling spells, and they just, get back together after I don't know how many months of being each up in their nick of the country.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. It feels like the crossroads a little. Geographically, it's advantageous, I think.
That's pretty nice, yeah.
Well, should we get into some spicy decks from the Tundra Wolves Challenge 3?
Yeah, we've got, what, nine of them to go through, so yeah, we can definitely dive right in. Yeah, the first one that we have is a deck by Thomas Ashby. The deck name is the Blasphemer, and if I recall, there's a whole article you can read about this on the Tundra Wolves blog, right?
Yes, which is called Tales from La Tundra, and we just put it up yesterday. It's a dive into the concept and development of this deck of his, which, by the way, won the Most Creative Deck Award at the challenge last month.
Yeah, I'll try to link those things in the YouTube video as well, just on the bottom.
Cool.
So people can visit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a really interesting deck. The article about it has a lot more flair than we might ascribe to some of the cards. If you read it, it's quite a good read. So definitely go check that out. But there's a lot of cool stuff going on in this deck. The first thing that my eye is drawn towards is at the very top. There is a Cry Shield in this deck, and it serves some reasonable purposes here, I think. Right? I mean, the primary one is, I believe, to go along with the Lord of the Pit, right?
With the Lord of the Pit, but there's also a combo with the Preacher. Well, it's a combo. It brings the Preacher out of bolt range. Thomas said himself, which can be pretty critical to countering any creature-based ability and buying him time than to go off in casting his huge fatties, namely Lord of the Pit, which is the card he built the deck around.
All right, can I just read Cry Shield for my own benefit and for the audience?
Sure, and everyone else does.
So this is it's from Legends, which is why I've never seen it.
Sure.
It's a 2-mana artifact, has an activated ability, 2 and tap. Prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn by target creature you control. That creature gets +0/+X until end of turn, where X is its converted mana cost. Okay, so with Lord of the Pit, you can decline to pay the Lord's upkeep, and then Lord of the Pit would normally do 7 damage to you, but instead that damage is prevented, and Lord of the Pit becomes a 7/14, 7/15, something like that. Okay.
7/14, I think. Yeah.
I hadn't even realized that, and that's one thing about this deck. There are so many little synergies; they're all over the place.
Yeah, the neat part about that whole scenario there is that also, like, let's say you have other things in play, like maybe you have Diamond Valley in play, so then when you sack them to Diamond Valley, you're actually gaining twice as much life, right? Because it's based on the toughness for life. Yeah. So there's just interesting stuff where, like, not only is maybe the Cry Shield, like, it's useful when you have Preacher, it's useful when, to protect your Preacher, like you were saying, or maybe it's useful with Lord of the Pit. But also, like, you can have more than one of those things in play, and, like, it kind of helps all those pieces. I almost feel like I want a second Cry Shield in this deck, and I've never uttered those words before.
I think you could.
Man, there's so much going on here. So he's binning the Lords of the Pit, he's binning the Lords of the Pit with either Jalon Tome or where the other enabler go? I guess just the Jalon Tome. What? Okay, he has 1 resurrection to bring it back. His Diamond Valleys to sack with the things that he's controlling with Preacher. He can take a bunch of damage from Lord of the Pit and then fire off the mirror later. Why does he have 1 Hindator?
I think it's just a filler at this point. If you know, for real, if you look at the iterations, this is like version 4 of his deck. And he used to go heavy on the full set of hymns, but he progressively cut it and now this slot is just a filler at that point. Also, the deck used to be heavier on reanimation, but he realized that with all the tempo that he could generate by either having the answers, be it with Swords to Plowshares or Disenchant, or by stealing stuff with the Preachers, he would just reach a point where he could hard cast the Lords. That's why he actually went down on the reanimation sub-theme, and there's basically only one resurrection left. So yes, you can bin it with Jalum Tome, but it's kind of become one strategy among many others.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, it might just be that, I mean, Cry Shield is interesting, but maybe it should just be like the 5th Spirit Link, right?
It has they do similar things.
Yeah, at least in terms of...
is also, of course, yeah, I mean...
It doesn't protect your Preacher, though, right, is the difference.
Right.
Well, in the scenario I pointed out, where you're trying to go the distance with Preacher, protecting him from bolts, I guess Cry Shield is superior to Spirit Link, and also with Diamond Valleys, Cry Shield enables all kinds of broken stuff. Sure. You know, like if you cannot gain tempo, well, just sack a Lord and win 14 life, and then you just bought yourself like 4 more turns.
A couple turns, yeah, that's true.
No, I mean, I've never seen a Cry Shield deck before. I mean, I think, Diamond Valley is a very natural home. And I feel like I've seen a lot by this point, but this is my first one. Can we talk about the sideboard and what is happening? Okay. I mean, I love weakness. You don't have to talk me into weakness. What are the matchups for the Tetravises and the extra strip mines?
That's a good question.
Yep.
I mean, I have some answers if you guys are.
Go ahead.
Strip mines I would board in against like Troll Disco, or any kind of like Troll Disco stands out as like the land superiority type deck that is going to have like multiple mazes or just other lands that are that you kind of have to take care of, like leaning on their factories, that kind of thing. Yeah. I do appreciate that this is a 4-strip format. He's only started 1 main, but he's got him in the holster in case he needs to break them out, which is pretty charming. But I mean, if you're running like Lord of the Pit, or you're relying on like the one creature that you're controlling a creature to smash through for damage, you definitely don't want to run into maze. So I think if you see those, it's a cue to bring more strips in. What about Tetravis?
Yeah. Tetravis, go ahead.
I recall, I think I read in Thomas' first blog article on the deck that Tetravis was a trump card for versus Abyss decks. Okay. Because at the end of the day, the Blasphemer deck only has a couple creatures upon which it leans quite heavily, and Abyss can come and ruin that game plan.
Yeah.
So Tetravis is one key card against them.
I like that you can split tokens off the Tetravis and still sacrifice it to Diamond Valley. No, actually, that's not true, right? Because you only get 1. I was thinking you would, based on casting costs. I guess Cry Shield still gives you the.
It's true.
Plus
you get a 1/7.
0 plus 6.
You can have a 1/7 Mama Tetravis with a Cry Shield.
And then you can sack it to Diamond Valley.
There you go. Yeah. Can't say I've ever. I mean, I think I would pay good money to see that interaction.
And then you can resurrect it.
Yeah. Also.
Wow, yeah, it just keeps on,
Yeah.
man. This is
that makes a lot of sense.
It's
It's
a
a cool deck, yeah. I also like the one Wrath of God. I think that's a card that we don't really see very much in normal old school decks, and
yeah.
it solves a lot of problems, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it
So-
goes along with the two moats
The moat,
to
yeah.
stop any kind of aggro strategy, and then
Yeah.
he just takes over with his bigger end game.
Yeah.
How about is it Sleight of Mind in the sideboard as well?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Is there any particular use to that?
I mean, he doesn't have his own synergies. I think he could be concerned about Gloom. Um,
Mhm.
Slide is a typical answer to Gloom.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Or
I'm
he
not
should also be worried
seeing
about
anything
like
else.
orders, like the Pump Knights, for example.
Yep.
It interacts with those. So
Mhm. Oh yeah, that's true. As far as stealing the Black Knights with Preacher, you can't actually steal them
right, he can
unless you
slide.
slight them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
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 Another thing that amazes me about this pile is how, with the same idea of tempo it generates through control and prison elements, how I think it acts kind of in spirit as a toolbox deck. As in, he buys himself so much time and is basically unkillable with the Diamond Valleys and all this stuff going on, that he will eventually cycle through his whole deck and helped by the Jalum Tome and find these pieces, these specific pieces he's looking for, like the Glasses of Urza, Nevinral Discs, the Mirror Universe, all of that, which makes it very cool in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One nice thing about it is just that the only cards that we're seeing as a playset are some lands and then also swords and disenchant. But the rest of it is just there's a bunch of singleton cards in there,
Yep.
twos and threes, that sort of thing. And so yeah, I mean you definitely, not only is that I think that's fun, I like playing singleton and things, right? Because the cards you draw are different and that sort of stuff. But also it keeps your opponent guessing. Like they don't necessarily know what you have, and I mean it gives you some kind of edge, I think, too.
Yeah,
In some
and
way.
it looks fun as hell to play,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one
For
of
sure.
the biggest draw to this deck for me is that this is a deck that I could see myself playing on the living room rug when I was younger, like a Lord
Sure,
of
yeah.
That feel,
mid range,
Yeah.
do everything deck. So I think it's beautiful for this reason.
Mm-hmm.
I love, and we can't leave, I don't think, without pointing out like the David Lee altars. He's like one of Toronto's finest. He does amazing work on each of the pictures. I liked a couple of signed cards, and of course he must have gotten a creativity prize in Eternal Weekend. Looking at that swamp,
He finished 14th most creative at Eternal Weekend 2019.
Cool.
Nice.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, you mentioned it quickly, but I think we should mention it maybe clearer that Thomas is from the Toronto Citizen of Brass community, which are pretty cool and up and coming, as they're holding 2 major tournaments a year. They've been for, I think, a year and a half or so. The Fireball in the fall and the Winter Blast, which I attended in last February, and it was we had a blast. It was really cool, and these guys, they're a very cool and vibrant community.
Yeah, great group, and Jason Shaw's done a great job, putting those events on and getting things rolling up there.
Yeah.
Should we move on to Yannick?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
I love a good Angry Mob Karma deck.
Yeah.
Actually, I played against Yannick, I think, in the last round of the event.
Tell us about it.
I also appreciated the name of the deck. did he submit that name, or did you come up with that when you're making the blog post, or
Oh, that's
I was
his
just entertained
idea.
by that?
That's his
That
idea.
was his idea. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay, yeah, that's pretty nice.
Uh,
Bad karma and getting hit by the mob. Yeah, I like it.
I mean, it plays out pretty much as you would expect. I mean, the point here is to start turning your opponent's lands into swamps with the magical hacks, and then punish them for having swamps with the karma, and then the angry mob, which gets bigger when it's attacking into an opponent that controls swamps.
Mm-hmm.
And that's essentially what we're looking at. I mean, what I like, there's a couple little things that I like here. One is the pair of recalls. If you're using cheap cards early to generate these effects, like Magical Hack only costs 1 mana to get your opponent some swamps, or like Swords and Disenchant, you tend to use early because they're inexpensive and you're answering the opponent's first couple threats. You can ban like a bigger card or just something that's not useful and get back one of those cheap removal spells with recall, which is handy. It's just a way of having extra magical hacks or whatever, or swords or whatever you need.
Sure, yeah.
That was interesting. I mean, otherwise, this kind of plays out like a kind of a mid-range deck. The other thing that jumps out here is the Felden's Cane. You might be scratching your head. Why is that Felden's Cane? I think the Felden's Cane may be it's either a 60th or a 61st. That Felden's Cane actually we gave to Yannick at LobsterCon last year. He I think this, and Francois, you can chime in here too. I think the story was his grandmother like passed away. Like,
So he had put a tribute deck up for her. It was an angel deck, I think.
So he had this whole story.
That's a really nice altar.
Just passed away, and he dedicated like his LobsterCon deck to his grandmother. And the story was amazing. It just kind of came out that day, and we just happened to have this altered Felden's Cane that was looking for a home, and it just kind of symbolized, rebirth, I guess, what Felden's Cane is doing. So we gave it to Yannick, and it's nice that he's still playing with it. I don't know how much utility it has here exactly, but it's lovely to see.
Yeah, it's interesting just to kind of also take a look at the sideboard as well. There's a bunch of sleight of minds in there, which I appreciate getting to see that along with Magical Hack. Those are sort of, usually you don't see both those in the same deck.
Right.
But it's definitely got, I'm sure it has its place here, like when you're talking about the previous deck, you mentioned Gloom and it being a good answer to Gloom, but he's also got some circle protections here that maybe he can use them with, and that sort of thing. There's probably plenty of good uses for those.
You mentioned Magical Hack again. One interaction that I neglected to bring up just in my little overview a second ago is you can hack your own karmas. If you hack your karma, you can just change it into karma for whatever forest or mountain.
Sure.
So that instead of using your hacks to swampify each individual one of your opponent's lands, you can just change your own karma to target whatever they have the most of.
But you know what? This sounds super brutal. Did it work against you when you played him? Because this sounds brutal to me. But I'm just surprised because I think he did
on a base black deck.
Okay.
So I already had the swamps. Did it work? No, I mean I don't remember. I don't think so.
But I know. You know why? Because unfortunately for him, as spicy as his deck gets, I think he went 0-6.
Yeah,
and that's why
I beat him that last round.
How did you pull that off? If you're playing black and he's got mainboard karma,
yeah, that's pretty brutal.
I mean, just kill him before he can stick a 4 CMC card. I guess I don't know. My deck was pretty fast, but
That's true. Yeah, you were on an aggressive deck,
like if
which we'll get to later.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. If you stumble at all against my deck, I can just kind of run you over. I don't remember the details of the. I was already sort of like hammered by the end of that, and I don't remember. Honestly, I don't remember a thing about the actual games in the entire event. I remember opponents and just kind of generally being a little drunk and a little on tilt all day, but I don't know. It was a marvelous time.
It was a marvelous time.
This is great content, right, Mike?
Yeah, it's actually perfect. Yeah, it's exactly what I hope for.
Something that I'm wondering, but that maybe Dave, I know you might have an answer to this, but I don't have it. Is that this kind of deck, the color switching magical hack sleight of mind?
Yeah.
I know that it is somewhere out there. Now, how far is this particular pile taking this idea in comparison to other spicy decks that we've seen out there that have a similar idea or concept? I know there's been some, at least, but how heavily is he invested? Because he's got at least like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 main board cards that, depend on that base type card switcheroo strategy. And there's more in the sideboard. How far is that taking things?
Yeah, good question. I mean, you usually see Karma with Cyclopean Tomb. That's like another way of like continuously turning your opponent's lands into swamps. The problem with these, or I guess the challenge I would say, is that they usually end up just kind of being kind of control-y decks with a gimmicky. So like the better Karma Tomb decks tend to not be too heavy into that combo, as you suggest. Like they have a couple Karmas and a couple Tombs, but otherwise they look a lot like the deck or like Esper Control kind of shells. So it's got that kind of gimmicky finish for a control deck. This is a little more mid-range. Like he's got the Azure Drakes, he's got the full play set of Angels. But I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I like the commitment to the full 4 hacks. I would like to see him add a couple. If we're gonna do this, you could push it even further by throwing a couple Acid Rain into your deck. Which you can hack,
great idea.
Which you can hack on the stack. So you can either, if your opponent's playing green, great. But if they're not, you can hack the Acid Rain, to whatever, to mountain or swamp or whatever. So I think I'd like to see that as well. If we're gonna like kick it up another, rung on the Scoville scale.
Or conversion. You could play conversion.
Yeah, that's a white card that targets specific.
Maybe that's just worse then.
Totally. But that's also in that space, right? So there are a lot of different pieces. I mean, I think the challenge is I want to see like a really leaned in, like aggressive, like on this theme kind of deck. The problem is like how do you do if you're only casting cards that like switch the wording of cards and interact with your opponent's lands, like your opponent's just going to run you over with the first, Savannah Lion or the first Flying Man or the first like Goblins of the Flag, right? So
yeah,
that's the challenge. You have to kind of solve for that if you want to win some games.
I would also say that usually the quote. I mean, nobody can see this in the video because the deck's in the way, but I'm doing air quotes here. Like the more competitive version of these types of decks usually is centered around Sleight of Mind because there's a lot more references to colors as opposed to land types, right? So I definitely think on the scale of like the spiciness scale, trying to play a magical hack deck is definitely on the spicier side of things than playing Sleight of Mind. They're both spicy, but it's harder. Yeah, it's harder to get away with building a magical hack deck, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, I want to see a hack deck that can go 500. in a big event. I think that would be amazing.
Mm.
Like slide decks, you can easily envision that, and that happens here and there. But the hack deck is like a fun. I know we've got a couple people around New England who have brought hack decks of different shapes and forms over the years. Yeah, that's a challenge to all you spicers out there. Is really put something together that leans all the way into hack and can be competitive.
Yeah, it's a tough space to brew in, I think.
Angry Mob, Cyclopean Tomb, Acid Rain. That stuff is where we want to be. And also, you can hack the land walk abilities of creatures too. So if you're thinking stuff like, I don't know, Bog Wraith or whatever, just
Solkanar.
Yeah, Solkanar, sure.
He's like
Nice,
the universal receiver for these spells.
Oh,
You
yeah,
can switch
you know
each
what?
other and the land type.
The Legends card, Righteous Avengers, is that it? Yeah, that's the one with Planeswalk. Let's hack that. That's like a 5-mana 3/3 or something. Oh no! Oh, much worse. It's 5 mana and it's 3/1.
3/1. Nice.
1. That's pretty bad.
I mean, land walking is a powerful ability, man. They couldn't go too far with it, right?
Right.
You got to be careful.
I mean, if you can't be blocked, who cares what your toughness is, right? So.
Yeah.
Well, one thing before we move on to the next deck, I thought I would mention also, just for the sake of clarity, that you can't magical hack stuff like Red Elemental Blast, or in my head, I'm also thinking of Volcanic Eruption, because you have to target the things that have a certain property, and in order to put the spell in the stack, the target has to already be there, matching the quality, right? So like for example, you can't Volcanic Eruption, target a bunch of lands that are islands, and then switch it over to mountain, or switch it over to islands, because you had to target mountains to begin with, and you couldn't do that.
Sounds like you've tried.
Well, no, I didn't actually. This came up in a rotisserie draft that we were playing, where somebody had drafted that combo, and it doesn't work. So yeah, like magical hack with Volcanic Eruption or Sleight of Mind with Red Elemental Blast. Like, you can't do those things because you have to choose the appropriate target when you put it on the stack, and if you can't do that, then you can't put it on the stack to begin with. So just when people are brewing these kinds of things, just keep that in mind. You have to be careful.
So Yannick, next step is include Acid Rain and don't go the Volcanic Eruption direction.
Exactly.
These are our notes. Hats off for the audacity of going down the magical hack route, and there.
It's a tough life, the magical hack life.
It's yeah.
All right. So next up, we've got Lawrence's Evil Enchantress deck. I believe that there's also an article on the Tundra Wolves blog that you can check out for more information about this deck. That I'll link as well in the video.
Yeah.
But this deck is really cool. I love an Evil Eye deck. I think it's a very good card, actually, as far as it's concerned.
It's annoyingly good. Yeah.
Oh, it's like unkillable, this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
love a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I was gonna say, this seems right up your alley, Dave, right?
Yeah, it is. And Lawrence, before the tournament, was PMing me with questions about remove enchantments, like parsing some of the legalese. And it is such a hard card to read, and frankly, the Oracle text doesn't help either.
Yeah, it doesn't really.
But this is a great list, and I just love an Enchantress list that has cut down to the much more sensible 3 Enchantresses instead of 4. That shows you
hard choice.
Yeah, it shows you how much thought and work has gone into this.
It's a hard choice. It's a tough decision because running Enchantress, rarely is a rational decision, you
Oh,
play
yeah.
that card because it's just so gorgeous, you know.
It's never a rational decision. I can confirm.
Well, I mean, as the logic goes, he's 3/4 of the way to rational. So
Yeah.
if that's making any sense. Yeah. But I mean, you know, it's a fun card to brew around, right? I mean, I'm sure if he wasn't playing the Enchantresses, you know, he wouldn't have chosen to play things like Imprison and Spirit Link and Demonic Torment. And
Demonic
those sorts of things,
Torment,
so.
yeah.
Yeah, you can see in his tournament report, the article that's up on the Tales from La Tundra blog is a round by round recollection of his the 6 rounds we played, and he did so good. He did really good, and you can see when you read that the Evil Eye plan is solid on its own, and the Enchantress bit kind of works out because he's boiled down all of the enchantments he's running. He boiled it down to function, you know. And if he sets up correctly, he's got all he needs to open the path for the eye just to get in, and then get in with his Spirit Link. So he starts shooting up in life, and from there you just can't catch up to him. I've played him, and we actually went into a best of 5 because we tied on the 3rd game, and it was awesome, and he won. So he actually went 4-2 in his tournament, which is a great record for such a deck.
No, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, not that that's not a great record, but I think that the choice of creature, or the choice of enchantments, is actually probably has a lot to do with that, right? Because
100%.
all of them are very generic removal spells, right? Like they can handle any creature, really.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so I mean that kind of makes sense, because I was at first thinking this deck has no Swords to Plowshares in it, which seems weird, but you know, Spirit Link is kind of filling that role, and Imprison is filling that role, right? Control magic. I mean, that's amazing, right? Like that's a better than killing their guy, right?
Especially when it gets
yeah. And then on top of that, you know, it's a Hymn to Turok deck too, right? So I mean, it has a lot of powerful effects going on, and I think, you know, the drop down in power level that you experience because you're playing Spirit Link and Imprison over Swords to Plowshares or whatever, you know, can be okay because maybe you draw an extra card, or maybe, you know, maybe your hymns make up for that, or whatever. There's a lot of things to sort of consider there, but it looks like a fairly, as far as Enchantress decks are concerned, right? It's a fairly reasonable Enchantress deck, I think, actually.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple things. I would say that the number of enchantments is lower than I would expect for a deck with 3 enchantresses, right? He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10 main deck enchantments. But I guess like the nice thing is that he has some ways of. Does he have any recursion?
Regrowth.
Yeah, he has regrowth.
Yeah, regrowth.
And also 10 more enchantments in the board.
Yeah, well, so post-board, I think it's really exciting, right? Like in the you know, the robot decimated wasteland that is Eastern Canada. You know, he has the 4 energy fluxes. I mean, the only thing better than stopping your opponent cold with energy flux is stopping your opponent cold with energy flux and then drawing a card off Enchantress.
Yeah, fair enough. Another thing.
He's got Ivory Tower, but not only Ivory Tower, but he has the, you know, the Zurin Orb there that draws a card off of Enchantress in Dark Heart of the Wood. Yeah. And then, you know, a pair of Cop Reds, a pair of Cop Blacks, the seldom seen Cop Blue. Between the Cop Blue and the Spirit Links and the Imprisons, and the bottles. Like, this deck is like a Serendipity just like shredder.
It's like a nightmare. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Takes the best card, you know, the best creature in the format, and just like laughs in its face, you know, all night. Which I'm sure he did, you know, more than his share of.
Yeah, you can read about it actually.
Like
Good
if I'm like a Lion Bid player, like this is like my nightmare basically.
Yeah, for sure.
And man, those evil eyes are just so hard to deal with. They have 6 toughness. They're unblockable, and the 3 power is like unblockable 3 power is a clock, man.
Yeah.
That is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
This deck I imagine took a lot of people by surprise. And there's not a more spicy or tilting feeling than getting beaten down by an evil eye. And I can say that as somebody who just got beaten down by an evil eye in the Neos Monthly like last week. It is a card, and I think we're going to see more of it.
You know, yeah, I think it's a very good card. The one of the reasons we don't see it as much as we might otherwise is that it makes it so that your Mishra's factories can't attack. And so you don't see it as a control finisher. But otherwise, I think you might see it a little more often in that slot. Like maybe, if you were maybe playing like some Sarah Angel win condition in your control deck or something, instead of that, you might see Evil Eye because it's actually harder to kill than a Sarah Angel.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I mean, yeah, it's just a cool card. One other thing I was going to mention too before we move on is, just the circle protections here. It's sort of off topic, but the circle protections here combined with us looking at Sleight of Mind in the last deck has me kind of thinking, like, I wonder if there's a Sleight of Mind Enchantress circle protection deck and how good or bad that is. But you get, because in my head, whenever I'm trying to like think of interesting decks to build, it's usually I want to get more than one use out of the things that I'm playing if they're kind of more narrow, like a circle protection, for example, and if I can get some use out of Sleight in order to change their color and then also draw cards off of them, and then Enchantress, maybe that's a thing to try. I don't know. It's just a random thought that I had, seeing those cards one after the other.
I feel you. I feel you. A last thing I'd like to mention is that with his incredible 4-2 run, this brings me to something I've been noticing lately. As time passes, I think we see more and more actually playable, very spicy decks, as in decks that have some serious game. And to me, this is really exciting because, when you brew stuff up, you can think about it like you want it to win, or you can also go, don't care about that at all and just want something spicy. But there's something that's beautiful to me when both intertwine, and they kind of both end up happening. I love it. It's just my creative brain and my spike brain just both light up, and I think this is one of these decks, and I'm very excited about it and about what's ahead of us.
Yeah, for sure.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Shall we move to the next deck?
We shall.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. We have this is Rukh Machine by. Is this? How do you pronounce his name? Is it?
You can call him Louis.
This is LG.
Yeah.
LG. Okay. All right. Oh yeah, that's right. I've seen him on Facebook before with that name. This is a pretty cool deck. It's got a lot of different things going on, I think, and I also I like those Rukh tokens. They're kind of neat. I hadn't seen those before.
Among his swag items, you can see there's the Rukh tokens, but also the little Capital Chaos pouch at the top. That's because Louis is one of the founding members of the Ottawa Capital Chaos crew, which are basically family to us because it's only a couple hours drive away. So I want to say we're there all the time and they're here, but it is what it is in spirit. And Louis also won the most creative deck award at the first Tundra Wolves challenge. That's the Brain Geyser down there that you see with a bunch of scribbles on it. And I think the way we should look at this is it's another Diamond Valley deck with strong Rook synergy, obviously, but also strongly leaning on the Abyss. And yeah.
Yeah, the Abyss is honestly the thing that's kind of drawing my attention in this deck. I mean, you see a lot of Ruck Egg, Diamond Valley. That's like square one for a lot of folks these days. But having the Abyss around and the high toughness artifact creature and the Scimitar, for example.
Yeah.
And the Abyss here is kind of like almost like a value Abyss. It's not like the primary plan. Like clearly, it's a nombo with having a Rook in play.
There's a something here. I think I might be wrong, but Abyss makes you sack the Rook, but you can never. It makes you sack the egg, but it maybe does not make you sack the Rook itself because it's not a card. Am I talking shit?
You are, sir. It's
dang. Okay, I thought there was something there.
That would be amazing. But it's not. It doesn't have like some cards have a funky like non-token rider. Like Chaos Orb, for example. Chaos Orb can't kill a Ruck token. For those of you who don't know, Chaos Orb can only kill cards, card permanents. It can't kill tokens. The Abyss, however, is not templated that way. It just destroys target non-artifact creature. The player, like the defending player, basically controls, or the non-Abyss owners. Well, I guess the active players chooses the target, but it can very much kill the Rucks, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I recall from his he was telling me about this deck, and I think he kind of overloads his own Abyss by once he's sacked an egg, he gets a Rook, and then somehow he sets it up so that he has an animate dead, so he brings back the egg, he gets to keep the Rook, and then get a second Rook up.
So he's basically chaining them.
And then you get the Skull of Orm up there that's allowing him to cycle or recycle his animate deads.
Yes.
And that's how he pulls ahead once he's stabilized of his blockers and or removal and or life gaining with the Diamond Valleys.
Yeah, it's perfect.
All right.
Yeah, and then with Skull of Orm, you can like keep that chain going, kind of, right? So you can actually always keep a Rook in play, even though you have Abyss out.
Exactly.
Am I thinking about that right? Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that's kind of neat.
I like the sneaky ways of if you want to like start by by binning an egg for whatever reason, like you can bin it with Wheel of Fortune, you can bin it with Recall. I love those cards as graveyard enablers.
Yeah, they're sort of just incidental here, right? Because it's not like he's all in on a reanimation plan. It's just makes sense.
However, the enchantments, they have to be important enough for him to choose to run a second Skull of Orm in the side, which speaks. It's one important slot that he dedicated to the second Skull.
Yeah, well,
it's kind of
control magics, right? Like Skull and control magic friends. I'm actually kind of surprised there's no main deck control magic because that definitely fits squarely within like the plan and what we're trying to do here.
Maybe he's got enough answers to creatures in the main, between all the blockers, the life gain, the Abyss, the bowl.
Sure.
One thing that surprises me, and I think it's a sneaky move on his part, is just the three counter spells that you see main board. The Singleton Power Sink, the Singleton Spell Blast, and then the Mana Drain must have caught so many people off guard because you didn't expect him to run counter magic in there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I like Funky one of random counter magic because definitely the first time you see it in a deck that you don't expect it from, it really it can really throw people off their game and also make them paranoid, even if counter magic is not really a big part of your plan.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool things happening. I mean, I love the I love to see the random chain lightning here, like the earthquakes out of the board, of course. Also combo with the eggs. You can kill a couple of these and pop your egg that way. I mean, Rukh is just such a versatile and interesting card. A lot of different ways to brew around it. This is a really cool take.
Yeah, I almost sort of like maybe going with some Abyss plan in the sideboard, along with maybe more creatures that don't die to it. And then in the main deck, like you can kind of fill in the gaps with some earthquakes, which also, like you were saying, kind of work well with the Rukh eggs and that sort of thing. Just a slightly different take, but like I think there's a place for Abyss here, but it might be just sort of hard to. I haven't played it obviously, so I shouldn't speak too too much to it. But it seems like it just might be hard to get the whole combo going, if that makes sense, of like being able to keep a bunch of rooks in play, even though you've got Abyss. So
I think that's more his end game, because you will notice that there's a greed in there that he can fuel with the 3 Diamond Valleys that he's running, and that's a big number. We saw with the Thomas Ashby's deck, it's almost a dedicated steal your creatures and second to gain life deck, and he only runs 2. But Louis went for 3 of them, so he gains life, feeds the greed, and then that's when I think he just goes over the top with counter magic up, and actually the greed makes me realize that the second School of Worm in the sideboard really it's because he can basically transform into a more enchantment toolbox deck. When he brings in Paralyze and both the control magic, he has so many relevant enchantments to dig for in or recur. There's the Greed, there's the Animate Dead, there's the Abyss, there's also the Paralyze, the control magic. That's lots of stuff that you can get value off the skull.
For sure. Yeah, it's a really cool deck. I like it quite a bit. All right, I guess next up we have this Dave Firth Bard guy. He played this Bad Moon Rising deck.
This guy.
I suppose you can just explain what you were thinking here.
Is this like Jay Leno to Hugh Grant? What were you thinking? I feel like I'm on trial every time I look at this deck photo now.
It can't be the worst deck in the world. I think there's way worse.
I went 2-4 with it. I think I underperformed where I wanted to be by about a match. But I had a good time. It was a lot of fun preparing for the event as well. I mean, really, all I wanted to do was push Bad Moon. So the guiding rule here was, play a playset of Bad Moon and make your deck choices, based on maximizing Bad Moon, like to the exclusion of other optimal, considerations. And so that's what we did. I mean, heavily influenced by David Chambers' work on Mono Black in 2017. He had like a 28 creature Mono Black Bad Moon deck that was marvelous. I mean, the problem with his build, I think, was the bottle. The bottle vulnerability of having 4 Graders, 4 Hazard Ogres, 4 Stone Throwing Devils, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And even bottle issues aside, one thing I learned in this entire project was that Black's creature suite is very, very, very shallow. I'm used to playing a lot of white weenie and a lot of mono green, colors where the creatures, like there are a bunch of weenie creatures, and they all have different interlocking, like kind of synergistic little abilities. Like they all have like little upside things that you don't really expect until it's like late. And black doesn't have any of that. Like the best one drop is probably Initiates of the Ebon Hand, and I know Francois is no stranger to the card, especially in the 4-strip environment where you need to hit double black. You also have strip mines and factories and other things, considerations, and being able to go like turn 1 swamp initiates, turn 2 strip mine, but still be able to him or sinkhole somebody is fantastic. So I think if there's one thing that I came to appreciate, it was the strength of that card. I don't know. Otherwise, you're really hurting. You're really hurting for. You have to have a critical mass of creatures in order to make Bad Moon work. Here I have 24 creatures, which feels like about the floor is probably like 22, 23 creatures, and you can go up to like somewhere between 26 and 28. So 24 seems like it's right in that right in that range. I like having castable 2-drops like Urg Raiders. Like the difference between black and 1 and a black is very, very high. And that's one of the reasons why I took Urg Raiders over Hasman Ogress. Bog Imp is a bad card. There's no way around it. It flies. I will say I like this deck better in the 1-strip. So like for the weeks before the event, I would test it in both 4-strip, which is what the event was, and in 1-strip. The 1-strip conversion was like take out the 3 strip mines, put in Sinkhole, Pendelhaven. And I like that version a lot better, even with the 1 Pendelhaven, like it, with the Initiates and the Bog Imp and that kind of thing. Even you can even pump the Vampire Bats once to make it a 1/1, and then pump it with the Pendelhaven, and then pump it again.
Style points.
To make a 3/3, yeah, it's like Vampire Bats is basically the Delver of Secrets of old school.
That's pretty cool.
Black, yeah. I don't know. I had a lot of fun messing around here. The splashes are super light. You'll notice I don't have a time walk, because Side Blast is just better in that slot. If you're behind, you need to kill something. Like if you're ahead, obviously Time Walk is great. But like if you're ahead, Side Blast is almost as great. Just like kill the guy, right? Like if you're ahead, you're going to win in a turn and a half anyway. So you just get there. I don't know what else to say. Out of the board, Gate to Phyrexia is against Disc.
Sure.
Because you're on the 24 creatures and an enchantment that buffs your creatures plan. You don't want to see Nevinyrral's Disc, and Gate just turns your horrible Bog Imp into a Shatter or something, which is great. I don't know. I had a lot of fun with it. It didn't perform super well that night. It did a lot of fun things in testing. I won't go back to it soon, but it was fun to play with that.
Yeah, it definitely looks interesting, and I have a playset of Bad Moons that I just have never put into a deck, sadly. And this looks like it's a good iteration of a Bad Moon deck. I think you've taken it to its most reasonable conclusion, I think.
I feel very strongly about the dorky as hell creature suite. Like the Bug Imp and Vampire Bat and Egg Raiders with the Bad Moon. That's just like that's my childhood right there. I love it.
And I guess before we leave, I will point out that you'll notice the deck is fully black bordered. However, I don't own beta Badlands, thanks to the very generous reprint and proxy policies of the Montreal crew. I was able to run my playset of Urza's Ante Badlands that I aggressively traded for during those Chalice. This is the one event all year that I could see running Urza's anti-cards, for real.
So amazing story.
So that's my Beast of the Bay plug into this conversation.
Sure. That's cool. To be totally honest with you, I didn't even notice.
Me neither.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
I mean, it speaks to the high quality of your, if you spend any time actually scrutinizing them, it's clear that they're not beta, right? They're a little off.
Right. Yeah.
Which is exactly what you want a proxy to be. You want it to be like, if you're doing a photorealistic proxy, you don't want it to be a counterfeit. You want it to be immediately recognizable as that card, but also at the same time clearly it's clearly understood that it's not a beta.
It's not a real card.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. So let's see. Next up, we've got Mark Floor's Beast Void deck. There's some cool stuff going on here.
Mark's one of the mad scientists in the New England scene, and he loves his playset of Guardian Beasts. Pretty much any excuse. He's been noodling on different. I guess you would, if the Euros would say like noodling on the Project M kind of archetype, and that kind of tree. But I think Mark, M in this case stands for Mark, as well as MG. Because he's been playing in the Beast sandbox for a really long time now. You have the disc and the Chaos Orb and the rocket launcher combos with Beast that you come to expect. But you also have, this is an interesting kind of riff on that, because you don't usually see Nether Voids in those lists. And Sage of Latnam is just a really sneaky card that can just kind of grab value out of thin air. And like, I like this deck because it can really get you along a bunch of different axes, and it can pull in different ways depending on the situation. This is a 4-strip environment. He's got the full complement of 4-strip mines. He has the sinkholes. So like early on, if he draws his opening hand and has like, call it 2 or 3 land destruction effects, he can just kind of lean into that, force you to stumble, and then slam the door in your face with the Nether Void, or just buy himself some time to combo off. Or he can play a much grindier, slower game. Hanging back, sticking a disc, that kind of thing, draining, mana draining something into disc, and just kind of grinding you out. He's got the full set of Maces of Ith, kind of forcing you to commit to the board. There's just so many interlocking parts here, and there's just a lot of versatility to it. He can tutor for his pieces with actual demonic tutor and transmute. It's a sweet pile.
One very important feature that Mark told me about on the way to the Sugar Shack is that he actually went unpowered because he was gunning for the best unpowered finish prize at the tournament. So that's a huge call on what's basically an artifact deck, because one of the downsides of Guardian Beast decks, and I know about it because it's one of my pet decks. Like I'm a huge Guardian Beast fanboy, and it's that you expose yourself to all of the artifact hate out there, but you're also in the crossfire for the City in a Bottle, for the Arabian Nights hate, which is City in a Bottle, and both of these can be so hard to overcome when you're basically playing a strategy that's often more fun and flashy than really strong. But he went for it anyways, and it is awesome. I think um, when you play Guardian Beast, the Guardian Orb combo a lot, you realize that it is about land destruction. That land destruction is one of the best things that you can do, and because you always have access to it. You know, when you've activated the orb twice, what do? You turn towards the lands, and that's when or how you try to cut the other player off. But now in the Force Trips environment with the Nether Void, and really committing to it so hard, so far that he goes for it and plays the sinkholes, and also goes with the discs. That makes for a really mean deck, in my opinion. And I would have loved to play against this or watch him play it, because it looks really fun. However, unpowered remains a huge call, and I wonder if maybe he would have fared better had he opted to go powered instead, because that's speed is key here. So yeah, I wonder, but it's a very cool deck in my opinion.
That's a really important point, Francois. I mean, and for all of you tournament organizers out there, incentives matter. The fact that you have specific prizes, you said ahead of time, okay, there is a prize for best unpowered finish. There's a prize for best gentleman's finish. You'll notice that he also doesn't have Mind Twist in his black deck.
Absolutely.
He doesn't have library. And incentives matter. Like, and if you announce these things, people will build toward them, and that's X number of slots that were freed up in his deck for maybe some more fringe cards or other interactions that we might not otherwise be seeing here.
Yeah.
It's usually you don't see decks that have Guardian Beast and Mana Vault in them, right? Because usually, more often, you're trying to sack your Mana Vault, right? Which you can do here with the Sage of Latnams, right? But I feel like a lot of times your Guardian Beast might get swords or whatever, so you're still going to disc away your Mana Vaults perhaps or whatever. There's a lot of different avenues that you might kind of end up having to go down with this deck, depending on what your opponent brings to the table. Can they sword your Guardian Beast, or maybe they have a lot of ways to blow up your disc, or just sort of whatever happens to be. So I kind of like that the Sages are here along with the Guardian Beast, because it gives Mana Vault a lot of play, along with giving disc a lot of play, and there's just a lot of interesting implications there. I guess is what I'm thinking.
Yep. Totally, and it's one of the cards that I always include in my, I call it Guardian Island deck. It's a very good value engine. Dave, you were saying that pulls value out of thin air. It is so true. Protects you from removal, also cantrips of the Mana Vault, which makes it basically a better Dark Ritual,
Yep.
And also, non-negligible, it is a 1/2, so it can, sometimes bash in or chip in for a couple points. And it can be key, because the beast, also turning the beast to aggro mode, also happens. And I usually splash red, so I have some reach, when I to finish people off. So these chipping damage kind of matter in the end. Another thing that really stands out to me, and it actually raises my eyebrow a little, is how does he manage with the sideboard energy flux? This one I can't figure out.
Yeah, that's a bit tough. I kind of wonder what he's doing there.
So I think the answer to that, I imagine he's boarding out stuff like Ivory Tower and Black Vice, and if you do that, all of your other artifacts are consumable and you don't care about flux. Mana Vault is a ritual. Disc you never have to pay the upkeep for, you just untap and explode. Chaos Orb is a spell, you know what I mean? So he's not, if you board that way, he's not super heavy on, I guess the benefit of being unpowered, you don't have a bunch of Moxes sitting around.
Yeah, totally.
So it's not the on closer look at the artifacts that he has, it's not, if he really needs the fluxes, it's not that big a deal.
That's a ballsy move. You're probably right, but it's quite ballsy.
Yeah. Well, and also I imagine people don't expect it either.
All right, they'll never see it coming.
Yeah. It's kind of cool.
For sure.
All right.
Okay, so yeah, next up we have, well, this is a blueprint image, and we'll get to the deck in a second here, but yeah, this is the blueprint for the deck. You know, they got a lot of things going on here. Just point out a couple of the key things that are mentioned here: Greater Realm of Preservation, Ivory Tower, Wall of Light, Maze of Ith, Pestilence, the Abyss, Winter Orb, Icy. All these things kind of build, if you look at the deck list, which we'll show you in a second here, it kind of builds to this story that he's drawn out in his blueprint here. So
before we leave the blueprint, can I just shout out a few aspects of the art
sure.
that are really, I mean, it's actually quite something. So he really took time on the maze to make it very maze-like,
Sure.
which I appreciate. The Winter Orb, I like the little polar bear. Like I clearly see what that is. And then the Greater Realm of Preservation, like that's not like a throwaway thing. Like there are like the angel wings that are you know, on the card. So I think a fair amount of thought went into this.
Yeah, and where you have to point out that the little mage dude on the top of the castle laughing, that's the mage Martin. Martin, our resident black player usually. That's himself picturing himself laughing at you because he's untouchable. That's the aim of his deck, is make himself untouchable.
That's awesome.
It is pretty funny.
It's,
I actually I didn't see this image or this deck before I bought these, but just the other day I actually bought a playset of Wall of Lights. It's like, this goes so well with Abyss. Just clearly what's going on here. Maybe we should flip over to the actual card list so we can talk about them. But so let's go ahead and do that. But yeah, so, Wall of Light 1 has cool artwork and it doesn't die to Abyss. It's great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're looking for.
Little backstory on this is that so as I said, Martin is our resident mono black usually player, but sometime last year he came to us and he was like, guys, I bought a playset of Scrublands, and we were like, what? And all went crazy. We couldn't believe it because he always plays mono black, this guy. And he started, you know, he left his spike state of mind behind and started playing around with, and the key card here, I think, where we should bring our attention is Pestilence. That's the card that he started playing this, and he started like ruining everyone's day and realizing that it's good on the offense, on the defense, it's so good, so underplayed, and he started brewing around it and found out about the Wall of Light Pestilence combo. But it was such a fun thing to watch this deck take form, and at the end of the kind of process, his idea was to make himself, as I said, untouchable. And Pestilence here plays a clutch role both in defense and in finishing the opponent off. Because if you look, you can see the full playset of Ivory Tower, which allows him, along with the Howling Mines, to win a bajillion life. And once he's up there, he can just freely Pestilence, and it's just like, it's unstoppable basically once he reached the late game. He's also got a couple drain life to bring you down and bring himself up, and the rest is basically just little twists. But it's a very solid, and it is very solid, I assure you, another of those solid creative decks. Like I was saying, it is very solid, and it is a joy to play against, and it was a joy to see it take shape. It's been awarded most creative deck, second place at the challenge.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely got a lot of those kind of key components that I find on their own, and they really part of the deck. quite fun to look at actually.
I'm losing you guys a little. I think my connection might be a little jumpy.
Yeah, that hit me as well. It might have been Mike.
Okay. Was it me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I was just saying that it fits a lot of the. Dave and I will mention this a lot on here, where when you're trying to build a spicy deck, what you really need to do is like make sure that the cards serve more than one purpose. But one of those purposes can be that it's just fine on its own, but then also when you get other parts of your deck, it serves some additional purpose, right? And I think like Wall of Light's a good example here, where like it's fine on its own. I mean, you're a control deck anyway, so it's a good blocker. And then when you happen to draw the Abyss, it also doesn't die, and then you kill off their guys, and then maybe they kill the Abyss, but then you still have a Wall of Light around, right? And it just I don't know, just same with Pestilence, obviously, right? Is that it keeps your Pestilence around. There's not much that they can do about that unless they kill the Pestilence. It's just really quite cool to look at. I like it. I like this deck a lot.
So many interlocking pieces, and that what's actually interesting to me about this is that it's not it's not a typical like greedy tower list. I actually don't see the card greed in here at all, and that's something you'll see some of these like Underworld Dreams, Ivory Tower. You think like that kind of more traditional like white-black archetype. Well, I think he eschews that in favor of the Parfait package, right? The Reliquary, Howling Mine, Winter Orb, Icy, and that's a really interesting. I mean, I think again it comes back to like some of these really cool decks are just attacking their opponent, in more than one way, and like you can play a resource denial game, while you're, encouraging your opponent to commit more to the board, while you're, having, stretching their disenchant and, shatter effects, and they're just like all these different kind of parts to this, I love the interaction between, like, well, Francois mentioned, obviously, gaining life with Ivory Tower and then using Pestilence. You also have Drain Life as another incidental life gain.
Divine Offering.
Divine Offering, incidental life gain. All these different kind of, just like little subtle synergies that really can make a pile like this really start humming and be more than just the sum of its parts. One other thing here is the place out of Juzumjin out of the board. When they least expect it, they expect you to hole up in the top of your perfect castle, and then game 2 or 3 you just come down and smack them in the face with the 5/5.
They hit so hard. I can testify.
The last thing I was going to mention also is just the lack of City of Brass and playing City in a Bottle in the main deck, which is
that accentuate the switcheroo effect of bringing the Djinns in because your opponent's going to see your main board City in a Bottle.
Yeah.
I'd say there is a. Like both of your reads are absolutely accurate and makes me want to speak out about the importance of Relic Barrier here. As a card, it is a piece of the Parfait package, as you Dave said, but it is also a very potent mana denial card on its own, as everybody's running powered decks and all in old school. But it's also kind of it acts as a main board silver bullet against workshops and robust decks and artifact decks, and it acts as such. And the same idea is true for the main board City in a Bottle. Not only does it hit everybody and their moms CDs of Brass, but also hates on the Arabian Nights decks more generally. And lastly, the Singleton Greater Realm of Preservation is also another main deck silver bullet that you know it kind of works on a wide enough variety of decks that it comes at a low cost for what it gives him back.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, like these numbers, his tweaking of this deck, it's spot on, and it is really good. Yeah, so the Parfait package, as I said, so there's an underlying mana denial theme in there, and you can see it with the Winter Orb up there. And that's playing the orb. That's when he realized he needed the barriers so much, because people always had Muxen, and it all came together and interlocked
Yeah.
to this beautiful Chateau de Lumière or Castle of Light.
Beautiful.
It is awesome.
Awesome.
All right.
That's very cool. All right. So next up, we have Benoit's Garfield deck. I feel obligated to say that we didn't include this based on its actual spiciness. As you can sort of see by the deck code, it's kind of your classic Serendib Savannah Lion Lightning Bolt deck. But it seemed at least worth a mention just because every card in it is signed by Richard Garfield, which seemed like something at least that I have never seen before. So I mean, maybe Francois, you have something additional to say about this, but
yeah. Benoit is he used to follow our group all the way from Nova Scotia, where he was living at the time. But he was in Montreal previously, but his job has brought him over there. But it is a long drive. But he did fly to Tundra Wolves Challenge #1, and just last year he ended up moving back to Montreal. So he is now one of our own Tundra Wolves crew member. And he also is an avid signed cards collector. And here you can see, obviously it jumps out with this deck. But there is a dedicated blog and or website to his pursuit of Garfield signed cards.
Oh, okay.
Although he owns cards signed by all the original artists, but Richard Garfield is one of his very special, one of his most prized possessions are the Garfield signed cards. And you can Google it up. It's called the Garfield Cube, and he's documenting, I think, the whole process of acquiring and classifying these cards.
Sure. I can add the link in the notes for the episode too.
Another thing.
That's really cool. Yeah, for sure. I mean, so probably not much else to mention. It's mostly the cards that you'd expect, the usual offenders.
Well, hang on here, Mike. It's so I agree. Obviously, these are all strong cards, and this is not like it's not a spicy deck in the because of the brute facts of the way that it's brewed. I mean, this is a passion project, and something that the man has clearly spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on over the course of his life. But the deck itself, actually, it is not just like it's not just like a Lion Bolt Dib deck.
That's true.
I only count 2 lightning bolts. And there are just like a lot of this surely because of card availability, and by card availability I mean what he has that is literally signed by Richard Garfield.
Saying Garfield signed card availability.
He's had to make some very interesting choices, and there's a Sylvan Library Mirror Universe sub package in here. There's just a couple other odd one-ofs Disrupting Scepter. There's a Triskelion
toolbox
here.
There's a transmute in here.
Playing with a deck like this, it unfolds in a typical kind of mid-range good stuff kind of way, but with some surprises lurking. And Ben is a ridiculously tight player. He's just very, very good. Francois, you probably know off the top of your head how he did. Did he place in the top 8, or I imagine he was like X1 or something?
He did.
Like,
He finished sixth.
Sixth, exactly.
Nice.
With
12 points.
Just like not an optimized pile from like a deck building standpoint.
Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah,
but from a style point standpoint of like having this passion project, and just like having to make do with the cards that were available given that constraint, this is a really impressive kind of feat. Yeah, I don't know. That's all I want to say.
Well, one thing I'll point out that seems kind of odd if you were trying to go down the fully optimized path is just having, I think, 1 swords and 1 disenchant.
There you
in
go.
this deck. Yeah. So actually, yeah. Now that you mention that, it's definitely got a lot of interesting choices in it. I think there's only 1.
Well, and some of those choices might not even be choices, right? Like it's a function of his hand being forced by what cards he has signed by Richard Garfield.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
You can also see that the top 2 rows are the actual. I think they're the actual sideboard. So I think what we're looking at is
transformational sideboard. Yeah.
Transformational into aggro mid range.
Yeah.
So
nice.
The bottom 60 is an actually pretty deep control deck because the only playset that you can see is a counterspell playset.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's a really important
2 swords and 2 disenchants.
We should have figured out, at the very beginning of this conversation. But there you go, Mike. There's more than meets the eye.
There is more than meets the eye. Yeah. That's true. For sure. Yeah, no, it's very cool. Actually, I should clarify. There's actually 2 swords and 2 disenchants. I just didn't see them both because the photos scrambled.
Yeah, the organization of the deck does not help.
Yeah, that doesn't help. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of cool stuff in there, for sure. But yeah, we'll link to the to the blog that you were mentioning, where he kind of has documented his trek to find all these things. Yeah, very cool. Mm-hmm. All right. So next up, we have a deck by Greg Tickholm. It's a blue-white-red aggro Land's Edge deck. I love when he posts his photos. I think most people know this, but they're unsleeved, and he does this all the time. It just adds something to the picture, right? It's just everything pops a little bit more, and it's just very, very nice.
You can see with the Tundra Wolves card in the middle that he's playing. This is the Tundra Wolves 2 trophy card because Greg actually won the event. So he is the Tundra Wolves Challenge 2 champion. He was defending his title this year. So that is, he's showing off. How did he do? I have the rankings. He ended up 12th. So
that's not bad.
Not too bad.
With this deck?
Yep, he did. I don't know if you've played him, but I did. And I got to tell you, this is a very well-oiled machine. It was surprisingly effective, I tell you.
Huh. I like the Arabian Nights patterns. I like.
You don't see those every day.
Huh?
You don't see those every day.
No, you really don't. You really don't. I like that, man. Yeah, God, it's so beautiful. It's Swedish legal, with the unlimited duels and the unlimited power. It's kind of it's a hybrid deck, right, between what you would call Taxed Edge, I guess, and like Lion did Bolt, or like kind of a temple type deck.
Yeah.
And so I guess there's different lines, right? Like on the play, you're hoping to lead Lion into order, and on the draw, you're hoping to stick a land tax, basically, which is pretty effective. Blood Moon can just kind of win games. The karma is out of the board in the right matchup. obviously, fit with the burn them down strategy. I think the spice factor here is definitely in the smashing together of two completely different archetypes that came pretty well with them.
Yeah.
I'd add that by running the full playset of Lentax, it's not as if he tried to go compact with the package, the Lens Edge package, because all the games we've played, he always had one Lentax or two up, and when you see the guy go 7 Alliance into Order of Labor into Lentax, you're like, Lentax? What? And by drawing himself some cards, this is so useless to the usual aggro decks.
Yeah.
That when he, started to chain Winds of Change into finding his Lens Edge, and you just kind of switches after having aggroed you out for a couple of turns, maybe down to 8 or 10 with his little critters. You never see it coming. And I've seen a lot of Lens Edge decks out there, but never aggro edge. And what I'm certain is that I never saw one that was so potent, as potent as this one is, because it was quite beautiful to see going off.
Yeah, I'm glad you highlight the Winds of Change, because that's really, I think, the central card in the pivot. What that affords you is you can draw a bunch of cards with tax, and then exchange them for gas. Hopefully, you just you can send 4 or 5 cards back into the library and hope you draw, a Bolt or a Disenchant or your Ancestral. You know what I mean? Like, or a guy. And that can, once you've thinned your deck out a bit, that can be a pretty powerful thing.
And I'll tell you what, like Winds of Change, he never casts it before he's got a hand full of cards that he doesn't mind throwing away. And these probably 6 or 7 cards he just drew, sometimes more when he's got multiple Lentax in play. They most definitely are gonna draw him into a Wheel of Fortune. So once he goes off, it's like lights out,
Yeah.
You never come back from this. And one fun bit was also that I was playing a black aggro deck at the event because I needed to play fast games. And the Lentaxes, they just disabled all of my discard spells so bad. So, they were fun games. It was a fun deck to see play. It might not be paper impressive, but it was really real life impressive to see play out.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like a reasonable deck. And the one thing it's making me think about is how you'll often see white weenie decks that are just playing land tax, and I just never quite understood the reason. But this deck definitely gives you a reason.
Yeah, maybe Armageddon, but he's not even running it, so...
Right.
These are very original choices and beautiful cards.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So gotta tip my hat off to Greg.
Very much so.
Nicely done, Greg.
Well, yeah. So that's our last deck. Do we have any parting words? I'm glad you guys could join me to go through these. These are really fun decks to look at, and a lot of cool ideas floating around. Special thanks to Francois for joining us as well. Anything you guys want to round this out with?
I'm just happy to be here. Does this count as social interaction for the week?
I think so. Yeah, something.
This is really important. I'm glad that we're doing this.
You drank some beer and you conversated. Yeah.
Hanging out with my friends, talking about cards.
Yeah, I'm really glad too. Thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to more webcam old school. Now that the upside of this is that this has connected us closer together. I know that we have our little Canadian old school group now, and people are just writing anybody up for a game, and it kind of it's taken off, you know. So it's in a way, it enables us to better connect. So
yeah. Yeah, that's one positive thing to come out of this is I think there's a bunch of we have I've got the same experience out here with the Beast where we had some subset of the players who were just like, I don't really want to play on webcam, you know, that's not for me, that kind of thing, and they just kind of, you know, eventually sort of bit the bullet because they didn't really have much other choice, and I think they're kind of realizing if you play with friends, maybe you're not the kind of person who wants to reach out and play a stranger, you know, or something like that you've maybe never met before in the community. But, you know, even just playing amongst your local group over webcam is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. And I think people are realizing that.
At the same time, a stranger is just a friend that you haven't met, especially in the old school.
That's true. I've made the argument. And
I would encourage everyone to just, you know, sometimes it's okay to play, you know, chat roulette with old school players and just get a game with somebody you don't know.
For sure, yeah, nothing wrong with
But now that we have nothing else to do, there's room for everything.
For sure.
I'll look forward to seeing you guys across the virtual table, you know, in an event sometime soon.
Same here. Same here.
All right.
Shout out maybe to I know that the Ottawa Capital Chaos, they were organizing their second Dazed and Confused or Dazed and FuseCon event, but it's been canceled for obvious reason. But on April 18th, they're holding a webcam old school tournament. So if you guys are looking for more old school, you can find us there and join us there for more old school goodness.
Awesome.
The Wolves will be there.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll put a link to that also at the in the video.
All right.
All right.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for joining me, guys, and yeah, we'll talk again soon.
See you guys.